Welcome to Merchman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, hear a recap of the ICM conference in Ames, Iowa from Lynn and Dylan on topics such as correctly identifying diseases in your fields, tar spot, southern rust, and common rust. And we talk about our strong PowerCore Enlist Corn hybrids.
Hi, this is Joe Merchman. Welcome to Merchman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Lynn, and Dylan, and you guys did a little trip to Ames, Iowa, and I've got nothing to say about the Iowa State basketball game. I'm just going to leave that one alone, okay? Congratulations, Iowa State. You guys are all glowing. I know, I see that. So, but anyhow, that's okay. Anyhow, Lynn, you going to start?
Yeah. So today I just wanted to talk about one particular session that I attended about soybean diseases and fungicide strategies in 24. And the biggest thing that stood out to me out of that, and of course that's with Dr. Mueller from Iowa State, biggest thing that stood out to me was the issues that they had with identification of diseases this year. And it wasn't just one disease, it was like 3 diseases that they were having mimicking symptoms potentially. One of them, the first one they talk about was the diaporthy complexes showing up as something that's not necessarily seen. They were showing foliar symptoms rather than, and for those I guess not familiar with diaporthy complex, it's pod and stem blight. Typically you see that on the stem or on the pods, but it was actually showing up as a foliar disease. So when they were looking at it, they thought it identified as something else. They tested the plant, and then the plant came back with within the diaporthy complex. So that was one that really puzzled them because it was not showing what would be the typical symptomology for that disease. The other one was red crown rot. Has not been positively identified in Iowa yet, and they had a few people that thought they had seen potential plants that had symptomology that was showing up like red crown rot, and that was actually coming back as fusarium root rot. And the part that I thought was interesting too is that they had worked with companies like Patternag, Trace Genomics to test the soil DNA, and they did find 29 fields that had the DNA sequencing showing red crown rot within the soil, but 0 of those fields, when they went out and tested plants, ever came back with actually plant-borne red crown rot. So I thought it was interesting because we have talked about red crown rot. You can go back to probably several episodes now. We have it in Iowa identified within the soil DNA spectrum, but we have not been to a point where it's actually expressing itself in above ground symptomology or even below ground symptomology within the plant. So interesting thing to see, but yeah, fusarium root rot, obviously that's an issue that we hope to take care of via seed treatment, but with a lot of these diseases, when we talk about seed treatment, it is for that early season as stuff tends to progress on the backside once that seed, and soybeans is tough because that seed coat's on the cotyledon, and as that comes up, a lot of times the seed coat will come up with the cotyledon and it falls off, and then our protection wears out. So we have to prepare ourselves to be making fungicide moves on the backside. Another one, they did find a new pathogen, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not even gonna attempt to say it, but a new pathogen was ID'd in the state of Iowa that is related to nematodes. So as we have the discussion on nematodes, we're not only talking about now soybean cyst as a yield robber, it's also now potentially vectoring other diseases that come with the territory there. So that one I thought was really interesting. I guess from a disease standpoint that we found something new. The plant pathologists, they like that kind of stuff. Farmers, we don't, and that's kind of the running joke with those guys is usually when plant pathologists are having a really good year, farmers aren't very happy. And this sounded like this was another year. Over in western Iowa, they were dealing with soybean vein necrosis virus that comes from the thrips. And the reason being that was that typically that comes in a drought. Western Iowa had a pretty decent rainfall this year, but what they said was the level of thrips increased last year because they had drought, and now we basically had to pay the piper for this year. So something that was last seen in that level back in 2013. So just another, more problems we have to identify and try to combat. From our standpoint, we're always trying to find varieties that can withstand field tolerances, genes, seed treatment, and when you get done with these talks, you just kind of think about what would work well in that situation, what wouldn't. I think we have a lot of stuff in our portfolio from, like I said, disease ratings, agronomic scores, seed treatment, that we combat a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, biggest takeaway is you got to get out in your field and look at stuff and identify stuff and make sure you're identifying it correctly, because there was some potential sudden death issues that they were seeing in northern Iowa. And actually what that was such a fast onset of white mold, and then the plant didn't actually die. Or it took a really long time to actually die. So the leaves were starting to go necrotic and kind of look like sudden death. And on the pictures they showed, that, I mean, it was kind of a gotcha, but it looked like sudden death, but actually the issue was white mold. So another one, get out in the field, scout, lay eyes on the plant. You'll see the sclerotia. I mean, it'll be a dead giveaway, but at 55 mile an hour, you're going to think that, oh man, my Saltro didn't work, or the disease rating on that particular variety is supposed to have a great sudden death score, and it doesn't, and you're kind of having some moments of indecision. Well, if you go out and look and actually find out that was white mold, well, maybe you didn't get Mershman treated beans with heads up. Maybe you need to get out there and do a little bit more, maybe Endura passes, just a lot of things that as we do autopsies, I guess, on the season, and that's what's really good about ICM, is it's the accumulation of a lot of data from research, a lot of data from observation throughout the state, and then honestly the country too, because they get a lot of people coming in. But the biggest thing on soybean disease I think I took away from that is we have to constantly scout our soybeans. And then when you scout and you identify something, probably would be pretty prudent to send plant samples in and make sure that the lab testing is matching up to to what you're seeing from a symptomology standpoint, because like I said, 4 of them, you would have thought they were something else, showed all the symptoms of a different issue, and it came up something different. So fun stuff, because identifying it in the field is part of the battle, but now we have some issues that they're mimicking or masking. So we have our work cut out for us from an agronomic standpoint with diseases already, and now this stuff is, I don't want to use the word mutating, but there's changing in the belief of what the stereotypical symptomology is in certain diseases. So
yeah, it's the old disease triangle. You got to have a susceptible plant, you got to have a right environment, and you got to have the disease present. And that's one of the reasons I think Ben and our team here decided to put the chitosan in, because chitosan does make those cell walls a little thicker, toughens things up a little bit, so some of these new diseases and whatnot makes it a little bit tougher for them to infect that plant. So that's one of the big changes that we made in our system this year, because we're worried about red crown rot a lot, and there's a lot of things that we know that can set that plant back, and so going to ICM like this and learning what's really happening out there lets us get ahead of what we can do agronomically from seed treatment, if we can do anything, or from genetics.
Like I said, it is good too, because we run into some issues that as consultants and agronomists that in hindsight, looking back at some questions that we've had, particularly thinking of one variety that thought we had maybe some charcoal rot, maybe it was sudden death. Like now you got white mold, somewhat mimicking the symptoms of sudden death. I could just add another one to the bucket list here. Is that one? I don't think it was white mold, but if that is now a something we have to worry about, that opens up a whole new Pandora's box of management that we have to do in those fields. That isn't maybe just as simple as checking a box or hoping, maybe it doesn't come back next year.
So the confirmation process, you send in plants that are just starting to show the symptom, not completely dead. You send them into the university and they plate it, right? They actually grow the fungus in a petri dish and see what kind of fruiting body. Is that right, Ben?
Yep.
And they can say positively that's the disease based on the fruiting bodies in that petri dish. So I've been down this road too. I remember going out a field north of West Point, and the farmer had an area that was dying, and the salesman, agronomist with us said, oh, nope, that's Phytophthora. And I said, well, why don't we send it in? So we sent it in and came back stem canker. So, I mean, I don't know anybody that can look at the plant and 100% guarantee that's what the disease is, and you just confirmed that it is much more complex than what we know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the problem is when a plant gets a disease, and you're not, whether whether it's Mother Nature related because of rainfall due to stress, or it's fertility issues because things haven't been kept up or they're out of balance, or you do have an onset of a disease, pick one. It's hard because once a plant is under stress, it's like a magnet to everything that can go wrong with it. So when you're looking at what these are and when you send them into the universities, I don't envy those guys that have to plate this stuff and identify which is the causal agent, because a lot of the times when we do send stuff in, we sent some stuff in for sudden death, and it took so long to get an answer back out of it, because it could be this, it could be that. It takes a long time to culture things, and there's a lot of disease that's out there, and that's I think that there are a lot of fields that at the end of the year or towards the end of the year where there's still a little green matter on it, you are going to find the Phomopsis, the Diaporthy complex. You are going to find Phytophthora on a lot of plants. Is it just at a level where it's going to start taking yield and showing symptomology. We had Syngenta in last week, and we were talking about some new products that they were offering, and they must have been talking to Iowa State or having their own data with the pattern ags and that style of soil DNA testing. And they can tell you in fields that have really high sudden death, there's this much more DNA. There's a higher level of the DNA fragments of sudden death out in that field, and this field's going to be at a higher susceptibility to sudden death. It seems like, from my perspective, not even sitting in these meetings, that they have to figure out what the threshold for red crown rot is to start getting the actual symptoms show up. Yep. Because it's positive that it's there, but it's just not at a level where the disease is high enough. So, we just need time, yep, unfortunately, and farmers live year to year, and we don't have time. We want things to move quicker, and it's a frustrating situation when we're dealing with disease, because it seems like it takes 2 or 3 or 4 years to figure these things out, and we don't want to wait that long.
Yep. And when we have a bad year for disease, that's really a good year from the standpoint of if you're a breeder and you're trying to select your material, and you can eliminate all the products that are showing high levels of susceptibility. And when you don't have a bad disease years, you may advance something that could be highly susceptible. So there's always something good that comes from something bad. So the fact that we are discovering these things will make us better. We have a saying here at Mershman Seeds: when something goes wrong, we say good. And why do we say good? Because we're going to learn something from that situation that's going to make us a better company. So the best thing you can do is keep that plant healthy, and that includes good fertility, good management. Obviously we can't control the rainfall, but the less stress you put on that plant, the more likely it is going to be able to ward off some of these diseases and get through it.
I think you brought up a great point. We talk about these diseases, and to go off of my doom and gloom to actually be very positive. Some of this, yes, we're picking better material, to Joe's point. We're getting genetic advancement just from the yield component from moving step change that Illinois and Indiana had record yield soybean yields for their state. So we have these issues, they're out there, but at the same token, we're progressing from a yield standpoint that, yes, we need to manage it, but at the same token, we are raising very high yielding soybeans, even though we're maybe having some issues here and there. And a lot of it, when we see disease, it's pocketed in either certain fields or certain areas. Just know that you need to be proactive in that management. But overall, I feel really excited about our company's ability to help farmers manage the disease complexes with seed treatment, with our breeding program, the notes we get for the disease complexes that we're up against, and we can help farmers position soybeans very effectively to maximize the yield that they have for their operation.
Well, Dylan, what did you take away?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of switch gears and from soybeans to go to corn. So I sat through a talk with Allison Robertson from Iowa State, and it was all about tar spot and rust. I know we got a lot of calls, the team did, with is it southern rust or common rust, and really took away that Southern rust, it's going to be in pockets and be more of an orange color through the whole leaf. But then if you flip the leaf over, it doesn't come through the leaf like tar spot does. So there'll be just like little, you'll see yellowing of the tissue of the corn plant, but it won't come through. So that's something that's really, I thought, was important to take home. And we don't see southern rust very often, but just like tar spot, it hopefully doesn't become an every year situation, but it's something that we need to kind of really pay attention to make sure we're getting southern and common rust separated, and they're not the same thing. Because southern normally comes in you're more of your reproductive of stages, and you don't want that plant to have a bad day in those stages, and that's really when we need to pay attention, because Allison's not necessarily concerned about common rust. She says there's absolutely no threshold to even spray for common rust. So that's something to really keep in mind. But then also with tar spot, you know, everyone seems to have it anymore, and it's coming earlier and earlier every year. This year they found it June 10th. And it's the earliest Allison and the team from Iowa State has found it. I think we found it locally June 17th, so 7 days later. But we're really seeing it come early because, you know, we're getting these hybrids in earlier in the ground, and with the cooler temperatures. So 68 to 75 degrees for 30 days is that prime time for tar spot. And you know, we're having a little bit cooler springs and getting them in early April potentially. It's really dragging on that cycle for tar spot. So that's why we're seeing more and more of it every year, and then just the residue out there is huge. And then too with tar spot, it's becoming, I guess, we're seeing it earlier and earlier every year. And so now we're seeing it 3 weeks. Once that pustule shows up, it's already affected your plant for 3 weeks. So we kind of normally thought of it as 2 weeks, and now it's pushing that up, I guess, another week. So by the time we see it, it's already doing the damage to that corn plant.
Couple clarifications now. Tar spot overwinters in the material, the trash, and southern rust though is blown up from the south, particularly when we have hurricanes and anything that pumps up that moisture.
Yeah, so that's how we saw. We fought 2 hurricanes this year.
Yeah, Burl was the leading culprit to that.
Yep. And it brought all that. We had a lot of wind, and it brought it up from the south. So we're fighting kind of back to the soybeans. The white mold is in our northern territory, and it's pushing down. We're seeing it in samples. We're seeing it in guys that they had no idea. So that's something to really pay attention to. We know we have a lot to look at for on the seed side, but then as farmers, we really need to start paying attention through the whole growing year.
And then where they did get those heavy rains blowing up, they also had aphids. You know, we know Champaign County really got hit hard, but there's differences in varieties when it comes to tar spot that we've noted. Ben, you want to make any comments about the differences in varieties? At least when we talk about varieties, we're talking about breeding programs. In other words, each breeding program has some strengths and weaknesses when it comes to disease. We think the PowerCore hybrids are fairly good against tar spot. I mean, they're not resistant by any means, but they seem to have less damage, but still damage.
Right, and I think the best way to look at that is that, you know, the inoculum's out there. It's how fast can the disease reproduce on that corn plant, and how well that corn plant can stay green and still produce photosynthesis in that process. And from a whole breeding program, I think Corteva, whether it was luck or skill, got lucky that their germplasm is different than that of what would be, you know, from the Bayer camp or from the Syngenta camp, but they do seem to have a higher level of tolerance. The disease doesn't replicate as fast on a lot of the Corteva material, and it doesn't seem to cause senescence as quickly with a Corteva material. So
specifically in that latter stages of the R stages, where we're trying to pump in that last little bit of weight and get that protein and starch into that kernel.
And you've seen that walking replicated research plots. In other words, where they have the checks in there from the other brands, and they're side by side, and one's more infected and one's less infected.
Right. Yep.
And that's
Late season stay green is it's not, it's very easy to identify to the naked eye. It's not like you have to, go count pustules.
Correct.
And it's you can see it to the row without even looking.
Because both look, when you look at the PowerCore products and you see it out there, that contrast between the green and the black pustules, at first you're like, oh man, that looks really bad. And then you look over to a competing product and it's like, that's actually worse because there's no green left. There's no, that plant has reached full senescence and it is, it's done.
Yeah,
Absolutely
it's like
done.
looking at 106 day versus 115 day.
Yep.
Almost.
Yep.
It's not great, but it's a little better. So anyhow, we're not trying to oversell the differences, but we're just saying there is a difference. That's fair to say.
Right.
If we're going to be completely truthful, there is probably this year we saw a little bit of, I wouldn't say susceptibility, but southern rust seemed to have a little bit more of an issue on maybe PowerCore than some of the Bayer products. But the nice part about southern rust, we know tar spot, we're fighting it every year.
Right.
Southern rust, we have to fight once every 5 years now, probably. And then with that application of fungicide, it seems like we do a really good job of stopping that one in its tracks and not running into any issues later on in that season.
Right.
And I think that was something that, to Allison's point, once again, they do a really good job of doing fungicide efficacy trials and then also looking at fungicide application related to the ROI. And again, it's probably the third or fourth year now, talking about tar spot and rust, that the R1 application of a fungicide is the best for ROI. They have seen in multiple applications that they reduce the severity, but from an ROI standpoint, it hasn't done anything yet and this is Iowa State's research. This is, as we get different geographies, that they definitely change. But in their research, the R1 application, especially with the multiple mode of action products that are out there, like the Veltimas, the Moravis Neos, or Moravis 8, which one? Top. As we look at the new products that are coming out, regardless of the companies, her research has showed that versus using Top Guard or just Quilt, they are doing a much better job of controlling diseases to the point that we're getting an economic gain out of the application.
I was just listening to an agronomy podcast this week, and it was talking about this agronomist that's been in the business for 45 years, was quizzed on, when you have a new product, a new corn hybrid in specific, how many acres are you comfortable with putting on your farm when you're looking at a brand new product? And I thought he hit something home, and he articulated it in a way that I don't think we've talked about before. But if you have a product and you're looking at a yield data set and it is fairly localized, and you had a product that was yielding really, really well. Let's say you have a bunch of strip trials in a 30-mile circle, and if that product did really, really well in that circle, it's time to go beyond that and look further, go east, west, north, south, and see how that hybrid handled different environments. Because if something's really good in a specific geography, but it kind of falls off east and west, you don't have the different stresses that come from year to year. So as MS Tech does, they look at huge data points, and you may have something that looks really, really good at the beginning, and then all these other data points come in and things kind of level out, and that's why you only have 3-4% wins. But I guess what I'm getting at is, if you have a product like the 2512 that performs extremely well from Nebraska to Ohio, and it sees all of these different droughts, it sees different diseases, it sees all of these stresses that start to ding yield back, and it's still an extremely dominant product in that wide geography and in lots of locations of data. You can get more and more comfortable with a product and get excited about that product. So this individual agronomist said, a third of your acres or half of your acres or trying 12 bags. It all depends on how big the data set is. And the data set that we have from our strip trials and our company originator data, we have products like the 2512, the 2411, 2413 that are extremely strong. And if you layer that data on top of 23 data, they look like they hang in the same rank, they hang in the same top third of the portfolio out of 40 products that you're testing. They're still hanging in that top third, that you have a great portfolio that you can go and basically whole hog switch out somebody's program. So if you're dyed in the wool this, but you got a reason to look around at different products or Mershman corn, you should feel really, really comfortable with the data set that we have, and you should get excited for the things that PowerCore may offer that the competitive product doesn't. So
yeah, you got the post-emergence herbicides you can use, and then you've got the double set of genes for the above ground insects. So in other words, Ben, you're saying you can switch out to Mershman corn this year with planting those 3 varieties, and you can sleep well at night.
Yep, absolutely. So thought it was a very, very good, thought it was something that we should at least mention here, because the data sets are very strong. If you have any questions on Mershman corn, feel free to call any of our sales managers or reach out to the office, and I'll be able to take care of you on data. Yeah, because we got lots of it.
Love to talk corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa. We love it every day. Well, that brings us to the corny jokes, if you guys don't have anything more to. So anyhow, I don't know if you knew that, but I was setting you up for this week. Last week, I told a couple snowman jokes. So we had snow this week here at West Point. So I figured, well, let's continue on with the snowman jokes, okay? What do you get when you cross a snowman with a baker? What do you get when you cross a snowman with a baker? Frosty the Dough Man. Frosty the Dough Man, okay. What do you call a snowman on rollerblades? What do you call a snowman on rollerblades? Snowmobile. Snowmobile, okay? All right. What do you say to a stressed snowman? What do you say to a stressed snowman? Chill out. Chill out. All right. Maybe these things are going bad, I don't know. Anyhow, I got a couple more. Where do you put the snowman who was misbehaving in jail? Where do you put the snowman who was misbehaving in jail? Isolation. Isolation, okay? Now, I do have a couple girl ones. I think I better tell them for the ladies, okay? What are snow girls made from? We don't want to have just snowman jokes. What are snow girls made from? Sugar and ice and all things nice, okay?
I don't know about that one.
I don't know about that one. Okay. This one here, I think we can relate to if you're married. Okay. What happened when the snow woman had an argument with the snowman? What happened when the snow woman had an argument with the snowman? She gave him the cold shoulder. Gave him the cold shoulder. Last one. I actually was able to integrate a snowman joke with a farmer. Okay. What did the snowman farmer use to prepare the fields? What did the snowman farmer use to prepare the fields? A snowplow. We'll end on that one, okay? Anyhow, good information today. As we look forward to the coming year, it's going to be here fairly quick. It's time to get your seed on order. Maximum discounts are in place right now at your local dealers. Supplies are good, quality's good, and we'd love to have an opportunity to earn your business. With that being said, I hope your family's safe, they're healthy, and we'll see you next week.